Epigenetics play an insane role in your life. Most people think genes are just set in stone things that don't change throughout your lifetime, and that don't change once you're born. They have a fixed mindset, and I guarantee you do as well. And it's based on false presuppositions on genetics and how they actually work and function. I'm just naturally prone to being fat. It's in my genes, I have bad genetics. Damn, I'm not building muscle that quickly. It must just be genetics. I just have bad genetics, man. My dad is 5'5", so I can never be tall. It's over. Epigenetics are so important that you can have a child with a woman who has the best genes, 10 out of 10 perfect goddess or whatever. And if that child was raised in a poor environment or one of the worst environments, that child is going to grow up to be a literal subhuman. Now, when I say subhuman, I actually don't think that people can be subhumans or are subhumans. I'm using that as an exaggeration to show how important epigenetics are. Epigenetics even determines things like allergies, bone density, the amount of androgen receptors that you have, your skin, how youthful your skin looks over the period of your lifetime, your aging, everything. Now, in the scenario that I just said, with the perfect girl, you and her have a child or whatever, and if it was raised in a worse environment, it would grow up to be a subhuman, right? Now, why is this the case? Perfect genes, you should be perfectly fine. What's going on? Well, let's find out why. And how. Plastics. Now, plastics act as an endogenous estrogen. It's just a fancy way for saying they act as a natural estrogen in your body. And this is harmful to both genders. Now, during pregnancy in the womb, if that person, okay, the female, is exposed to any sorts of plastics, BPAs, it will completely antagonize the young boy's DHT receptors. Now, if you know anything about DHT, this is horrible because DHT is basically super testosterone. Now, in the womb, it's responsible for your bone mass, your wrist size, your ankle size. Now, your DHT receptors, the amount you have, are predetermined in the womb, and way more that I can't even fit into this video. Now, in puberty, it promotes facial masculinization, jawline growth and sharpness. It determines how masculine your eye area becomes. It promotes your brow ridge growth and your chin growth as well. DHT also increases penile size dramatically. Like, I'm not even talking 1 or 2 centimeters. This is responsible for growing your thing inches upon inches of length. So now, during your young adulthood, it actually lengthens and increases your puberty, so you can have a much longer puberty and get more benefits of a longer puberty. Enlarges the Adam's apple. Is also responsible for making your voice deeper. It's responsible for giving you your facial hair, and it determines how much your frame and your actual skeletal frame grows. It's responsible for the age at which your growth plates fuse together permanently. Instead of fusing at 19, your growth plates could fuse until like you're 25. So yeah, DHT is pretty important. Now, plastics and BPAs can also alter the methylation, which is just changing of your DNA. Now, the way it changes it isn't the natural way. It's going to change it in a negative way. So for example, it can lead to diseases such as autism, schizophrenia, and neurological diseases. BPAs aren't just things that increase your estrogen. These are things that can completely change your DNA. Now, when this child is exposed to plastics, BPAs, pollutants, when they grow up, it can also affect their future children as well. So you can see where this is sort of going and how powerful environmental changes are, which is what has led to an increase in allergies. I don't think you guys understand. Allergies weren't that prevalent. They weren't even really a thing 100 years ago. Plastics can also cause a worse immune system in the child and during their lifetime, as well as premature aging, high amounts of inflammation. This is literally just plastics, guys. Now, on to how much protein a child gets in pregnancy. Lack of protein leads to more fragile bones and smaller wrists, significantly reduces the muscle mass of the child, and stunted height growth. In extreme cases, however, this can lead to a phenomenon called kwashiorkor, which basically means that you're meeting your caloric needs, but you're not meeting your nutritional needs, in this case, protein, which causes you to have a high amount of defects in many areas. This is usually seen in poorer countries with extremely high carbohydrate diets. Now, a lack of essential fats in the diet in pregnancy. Yes, fats are good, at least the animal fats. Fats don't cause heart disease like they're always telling people. It's a psyop, and it's actually the seed oils that were introduced that cause this huge spike never seen before in the human population throughout all of time until now. Lack of fats in pregnancy actually leads to mental retardation. And no, this ain't a joke, I'm so serious. You can get away with smiling because no one's there, huh? Well, I'm here. And I just came to tell you to know you're a bad man. You're a bad man. I'm only smiling because you're smiling, so don't even try that. Significantly lower IQ, stunted neurological development, heart problems and poor eyesight, as well as CNS problems and more. As we can see, even if you're in a relationship with someone with the perfect genes, that person during their pregnancy was exposed to pollutants, high amounts of plastics and BPAs, didn't get the right nutrition and the right amount of nutrition, well, we can see that that person or that child will grow up to be a subhuman. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I literally only mentioned pregnancy. That is literally the tip of the iceberg. Even so, I'm not going to go into every single nutrient, all that stuff, because this be a long video, but I just gave you an overall view. Now, as a bonus, even certain enzyme antagonists, now an enzyme is just something that speeds up a reaction. In your body, there's loads of reactions and they need to be sped up by enzymes, and obviously, if they're being counteracted and if they're being stopped, then this isn't good for your body. Now, enzyme antagonists during fetal development can stop whole genes from being expressed. So you could have had a great gene that could have made you super duper tall, but because the enzyme's been antagonized, that gene will not be expressed. What I'm about to show you is a video that shows and unlocks the key to fixing these effects and shows basically how these effects take place.
To begin the study, a population of animals was selected which Pottenger aptly dubbed run-of-the-pen cats. He was not interested in physical perfection. His major concern was that his cats represent a normal sampling of animals, with the exception that cats with obvious deformities or disease were excluded. Pottenger was intrigued by what he termed heat labile factors. He asked, does the cooking process somehow render food nutritionally deficient, causing eventual physiological degeneration? A basic diet was designed consisting of raw meat, viscera, bones, a small amount of raw milk, and cod liver oil. Each day, this basic diet accounted for 1/3 of the total dietary intake of the animals. The remaining 2/3 of the diet was the dimension of experimental manipulation. One group of cats received raw meat or cooked meat along with the basic diet. The other group of cats were given raw milk, pasteurized milk, evaporated milk, or sweetened condensed milk. Each cat's daily diet then consisted of 1/3 of the basic diet, plus 2/3 of the prepared food which was under study. And once assigned to a specific group, the animal's diet was held constant. Although there were two different studies, one focusing on milk and the other on meat, the results of both studies were nearly identical. Over the next 10-year period, Pottenger observed and recorded numerous physiological changes in the experimental animals and their offspring. First, you will observe the raw milk animals. They move about the pen with a great deal of agility and coordination. Notice the sheen to the fur and the normal sexual interest displayed toward the male in the next pen. As would be expected, they land on their feet when thrown in the air. The pasteurized milk-fed cats, shown here, move about the pen in a manner quite different from the raw milk cats. The cat in the foreground actually developed arthritis during the experiment. They are lethargic, much like animals in a zoo. When thrown a short distance, these animals show a slightly impaired sense of coordination. Dental deterioration was also common. Note the abscesses above the molars, the reddish cast of the gums, and the soft gingiva. With evaporated milk, there was even greater deterioration. When the study was begun, this cat was better developed than any animal shown thus far. The sweetened condensed milk-fed cats not only had their milk heat processed, but there was the addition of sugar. They are nervous animals. Again, there is marked deterioration in coordination and dental abnormalities. Notice particularly the abscesses and the purple tone to the membrane of the mouth. For a further comparison, here is another example of normal development. Notice the firm gingiva, the normal coloring tones, the beautiful broad mouth, the full jaw with obvious power. This animal happens to be a male, but the comparison is nonetheless valid. Here is another illustrative comparison. The raw milk female gets in 20 or 30 licks for every one of the pasteurized milk female, then leaps away in disgust. These were all first-generation animals, born of theoretically healthy parents, and who themselves were healthy at the beginning of the study. Disturbing as these observations might be, the impaired balance, the lack of energy, the dental deterioration, some of the most significant findings emerged as Pottenger extended his study down to the second and third generations. Almost immediately, Pottenger noticed that animals fed the raw meat diet for 2 generations appeared larger than the same generation of cooked meat cats. At 16 weeks, this second-generation raw meat cat weighs 2,000 grams, while the second-generation cooked meat animal only comes up to 1,600 grams. Compare the black kitten with this raw meat kitten. The sheen, the sparkle of the eyes, the well-developed face. This is a raw meat animal with the full, round face. A later examination of the skull showed a firmly developed zygomatic arch. The frontal sinuses were complete, and calcium content of the bones throughout the body ranged from 12 to 17% by weight. The skulls of adult cats with a long ancestry of raw food diets are surprisingly constant. Here we find the development of a second-generation cooked meat animal. The head has begun to flatten and is actually smaller than the comparable raw meat cat. The skull shows the major reasons for this change. The zygomatic arch is not completed. The nasal development is somewhat irregular, and the calcium content has fallen to 10%. Third-generation cooked meat animals show the most remarkable skeletal change. The skull is considerably smaller. It is flat with pointed features. The skull shows a poorly developed zygomatic arch. The bones are paper-thin and soft like sponge rubber. The frontal sinuses had developed in a peculiar fashion, and the calcium content of the bones had fallen to a low 3% by weight. Activity level is another index of interest. In this pen, there is an obvious difference in activity level between the raw meat animals and the cooked meat animals. One of these cooked meat kittens actually had a broken back resulting from a failure in development. Moving into the third generation of experimental animals, the degeneration was even more pronounced. The smaller animal is a cooked meat kitten and is actually the oldest of the 3. The kitten on the left is a second-generation raw meat cat, and the one on the right is a second-generation cooked meat cat. Here is a second-generation cooked meat mother with her third-generation offspring. She has a male body configuration. Her offspring developed nasal and ocular allergies. From this same litter came an asthmatic kitten, purportedly the first to be reported in the research literature. Again, there is marked dental deterioration, abscesses, poor coloring, and gingival irritation. Pronounced exhaustion was a typical observation among the third generation of cooked meat kittens, as well as impaired coordination. This third-generation cooked meat kitten had over 24 fractures, resulting from a failure in development. And finally, this little third-generation cooked meat kitten was unable to release its claws from the hardware cloth, and probably would have died had not the assistant taken it down. At this juncture in the study, a most interesting development emerged. The cooked meat cats were unable to successfully reproduce after the third generation. Most were void of sexual interests, and those that had attempted to mate could only produce stillborn litters. On the other hand, the raw meat animals continued to reproduce healthy offspring generation after generation. Physiological deterioration down the generations is quite graphic. If it is true with human beings, as it is with cats, that nutritionally caused deterioration is passed down the generations, a sobering challenge stands before us.
Now, their diet and their environment alone affected everything about them, literally everything. Their zygomatic bones, their maxilla, their mandible, teeth, their frame, their width, their size, weight, their reflexes, their motivation, their athleticism, and the amount of anxiety they had and their drive, aka libido. Now, we're not cats, but we're mammals, and what we're finding is that the same thing occurs in humans, that your diet and your environment has significant impacts on your facial aesthetics and on your genetics overall. I want you to remember that before this high fructose, glucose, and high carbohydrate stuff was pushed onto us, all of this stuff didn't exist years ago. Malocclusion problems didn't exist in this amount years ago. 100 years ago, this was not a problem. People did not have horrible facial structures, horrible teeth. Like this wasn't that much of a problem. And we can even see they pass these traits on. They pass environmental changes on. Facial aesthetics are almost 99% your overall environment and lifestyle and your diet. This was proved by Weston Price. What we're actually finding is that good genetics, or genetics in general, actually help with slowing down or lessening the degeneration. What we're seeing is that genetics will favor certain parts, certain genes, and sacrifice other ones. So for example, a low IQ family but a strong body. Instead of having good genetics overall, they'd have to sacrifice some and bolster others. I'm just making an analogy here so it's easier for you to understand. Obviously, it's much more complicated than that. Blaming genetics is cope, and I always had an inkling that it was, because God originally created man to be perfect. However, the fall, original sin, Adam eating the tree and stuff like that, not the tree, the apple tree, but you get what I mean, caused irreparable damage to our future generations, humans, and the world, the universe in general. And now we're far from what our full potential once was, and we're degrading because of the world, the environment. We perceive good development, good looks as attractive because it's what's healthy, as positive because they're the consequences of nourishment, health, and vigor. An attractive face just shows peak health. That's literally all it is. I'm gonna slightly go off my own headcanon here, right? But I truly believe everyone at their full potential had some sort of capacity to have a healthy, attractive face, have all these good features that we deem attractive, right? But due to environmental impacts over generations, it's caused serious damage to their genes and their health, and as a result, they've become uglier. I mean, if you even watch the video, you can see some serious consequences for the cats who had cooked meat. Like, they literally looked completely different. They weren't even, in the end, they weren't even able to produce offspring. They were producing stillborn cats, and as today, we're seeing an increase in infertility. And we could see that same degradation, is that even a word, of humans with the introduction of high fructose corn syrup and high sugar carbs in the Western diet, lack of animal meats, and high amounts of processed foods in the Western diet as well. Genetically modified vegetables with crazy amounts of phytoestrogens, again, just another thing that increases estrogen. Now, correlation doesn't always equal causation strictly on its own, but when you start to look at the overwhelming amount of evidence, you start to see the bigger picture. Now, how do we fix all of this? The key is in our diet and our lifestyle. Now, a lot of you probably have a lot of presuppositions about your diet and about the correct lifestyle that you should have in order to be healthy. And I'm gonna break all of those down with proof, with facts, and I'm gonna really show you. Like, if you still have the notion that fruits and vegetables are some of the healthiest foods, then boom, that's already a very wrong presupposition that you have. Now, there was a man who once had horrible gut and bowel problems. On the lines of his intestines, he had open wounds and what's called polyps. Every time he wanted to use the toilet, pain and suffering would ensue. And this happened for around 10 years. This is a disease called ulcerative colitis. Now, surprisingly, he actually completely cured this disease. And the way he did it was by completely transforming his diet from what it once was, which was actually causing him and causing this disease within him. Now, he also had diabetes. Now, around the world, the doctors will tell you, and even on national websites, it will say type 2 diabetes is incurable. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and he managed to cure it with this diet. And the person that he was actually going to, his endocrinologist, actually told him to stop this traditional diet that he was doing and stick to the old one. Now, this new diet had plenty of saturated fats. His endocrinologist, obviously trained in the fields of modern science, said that he should stop this diet immediately as it's only going to make his condition worse. Now, the first presupposition that we have to completely destroy is the saturated fats lie, and fats in general. Now, the fats that are bad are the fats that come from seed oils, vegetable oils, all of the oils that people nowadays use to cook their food. Now, in the 1950s, a guy called Ancel Keys was actually the reason why modern academia have this wrong opinion on diets. He showed people a graph that had a correlation with people who had high saturated fatty acids and mortality rate and the countries that used them. And there was a clear correlation, so people accepted it. And this data was only from around 6 countries. Now a few years later, there was a study done that completely debunked this one, and it showed a negative correlation with actually eating more saturated fats and mortality. And this was from the same pool of data that Ansel was using. And now Ansel Keys actually had data from multiple other countries, but he left those out. And when you looked at the data from those other countries, he found that there was no correlation. Absolutely no correlation, so he left them out on purpose. And now regardless of this information was pushed to the public as fact. And in the Times magazine, Ansel Keys was on the cover, and in this Times magazine it was pushed to the public that yes, saturated fatty acids are the reason why heart disease is increasing. Now years later, in another Times article, there was a heart surgeon. And this heart surgeon had vast amounts of experience. He'd operated on 15,000 patients, and he was experienced in the realm of heart disease. And he said himself that there was no correlation between cholesterol and heart disease at all. This was a famous and renowned heart surgeon. They've done many meta-analysis, many actual reviews of literature, and found that saturated fats are actually good for you. They're very good for you. The second lie is the carbohydrates lie. The man in question now is talking about, his endocrinologist told him to actually eat more carbs and eat more whole grains as well as fruits and vegetables. And in this traditional diet, he completely cut out his carb consumption. Now this high carbohydrate, high grain recommendation, high cereal recommendation started all in 1977 when Dietary Goals was released to the public by the USA. And because of the data that was accepted by Ansel Keys and pushed onto the public, the US felt like they needed to change up their diet so that they could combat the high heart disease. So they actually proposed to increase their carbohydrate consumption and decrease the saturated fats consumption. Now this decision had serious pushback from people who are actually scientists and actually knew what they were talking about. Despite all this protest, the food pyramid was released in 1991, and it consisted at the base of it a high carbohydrate, a high vegetable diet, and pretty much the things that will actually help you were at the top. What people don't realize is carbohydrates is literally just sugar. Even complex carbohydrates, it's the same sugar. Just because you slap complex behind carbohydrates doesn't mean that there's suddenly no sugar. There are literally chains of glucose, sugar molecules. Even the brown rice that you're eating, the brown sugar, all of the pasta, bread, all the stuff that you think is good, it's just a bit of, it's complex carbohydrates, it's good for you. No, and this leads to insulin resistance, and then it leads to diabetes. And we've seen an increase in the rate of use with diabetes. And unfortunately, I actually experienced this firsthand. I realized that I was actually contracting symptoms similar to type 2 diabetes. You know, after big meals, my fingers, the blood would leave my hands in my fingers. And I was no way in hell that I thought I was actually getting diabetes, because I had like a decent physique. I wasn't fat or anything, so I thought, oh, you only get type 2 diabetes when you're fat. I was a huge cereal eater. I would never skip cereal. I'd always be eating cereal in the mornings. I'd have high amounts of carbs. I'd have a lot of rice, because obviously in African diets rice is quite prevalent. It's a cultural thing. I had a lot of rice for dinner and stuff like that. And yeah, this is what I can 100% attest to what caused, you know, my diabetes. I didn't actually have diabetes, but you know what I mean. Like, I had symptoms of it, and I probably had insulin resistance as well. I had a lot of the symptoms. And then through just completely cutting out my carbohydrates, or completely reducing them, and completely cutting out sugars in general, that's how it completely got cured, mate. Like, I don't experience none of that no more. And if you have even slight insulin resistance as well, this can severely affect your growth. You do not need carbohydrates in your diet. You do not need a single carb in your diet. It's not a need, it's not a must. There's no nutrition in carbohydrates. All it is energy. The minimum carbohydrate consumption that is consistent with good health is zero. This doesn't mean that our bodies don't need glucose to function, but the thing is, our bodies can make glucose. It can make it, and it can make it from certain amino acids that we get from meat, and we get it from our saturated fats. That's why when you see a lot of people on a carnivore diet, they'll enter a state of ketosis, which is the use of fat as energy. They'll start burning off their fat, and it proves and it shows, as this 71-year-old man who, as I said at the start, had all these diseases, he didn't eat a single carbohydrate, and he was actually getting better. He was getting more healthier. He actually had an all-meat diet. An all-meat diet. Can you believe it? Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not actually going to recommend going on a carnivore diet, and that's not the actual traditional diet that we went on. And the third presupposition that I'm going to completely destroy, fiber and plants. Now, of course, this man had a bowel condition, right? So if he just ate plants and fibers, then this would help his bowels, as we all know that fibers are good for your bowels and they're good for pooping, right? Now let me tell you the truth about fibers. The definition of fiber is that it's an indigestible carbohydrate. It cannot be absorbed or broken down by your body. And no randomized or controlled studies actually support fiber being good for constipation or things like that. Fiber has no help with actual symptoms of a bad bowel and symptoms that this man was going through, like bloating, bleeding. The best available evidence on this actually shows that it worsens these symptoms. It worsens these symptoms and makes it worse. There was a study in 2012 done on the symptoms of having a bad bowel and the complete reduction of fiber from patients' diet, and they found that the bowels actually improved in health significantly, like almost completely cured it. Complete improvement. Less fiber, more symptoms improved. Now on to plants. Now the 71-year-old man in question actually went on a diet, as I say again, a full meat diet. He had no plants and his health overall increased dramatically. And I also need to completely debunk this theory that plants are some sort of superfood and that they're one of the most nutritious foods you can have. No, this is wrong. Saturated fats, fish, liver, organ meats are all 10 times, 100 times better than plants. If I were to compare how nutrient dense these saturated fats and meats are compared to vegetables, in fact, let me just give you an example. Leafy greens contain folate and calcium. Carrots have choline. Avocados have vitamin B6. Beetroots have iron. Nuts have zinc. Mushrooms have riboflavin. It's great. But you know what? An egg yolk has all of those things and more. Not to mention, half of these nutrients you can't even get from these plants. You know why? Because they're not bioavailable. They have to be crushed, they have to be broken down, and they can't be broken down most of the time by the body. People aren't frying and not cooking an avocado, bruv, so they're not going to be able to get lots of the nutrients from that avocado. Or fermenting them, they're not doing anything to actually get these nutrients. Fruits and veggies are so good. It's a psyop. Think about it, from when you were young, from the TV shows to the people at school to everyone around you saying fruits are good, have your fiber. Think of the have an apple a day. No one says have a steak a day, do they? It's all ingrained in you from young. That's why it seems so crazy to even, are you stupid? Fruits are so good for you. Come on, man. Even the tallest populations in Africa, the Dinka tribe, the Tutsis, their diet has a lot of milk, has a lot of meat as well. The difference in the Hutus and the Tutsis of Rwanda can show you literally the diets, just how powerful the diets are. If you're stuck on an island and you had all vegetables and plants, versus if you had even just one of the ingredients I'm going to list, raw cheese, completely just raw cheese. The person who was stuck on the island who had loads of plants, loads of fruits, and the person on the island who had raw cheese, the person who had raw cheese would literally survive. They'd be perfectly fine. Raw cheese has literally all of the nutrients we need. Plant nutrients aren't what they think. They're not what you think they are. In fact, there was a study done that shows that plants, an all plant diet or a high plant diet, actually increases risk for cancer and actually worsens health significantly. You have more allergies, you have weaker bones, everything will just be downhill. The vitamins and minerals in plants are very hard to digest, extremely hard to digest. People say our spinach is a superfood, has high amounts of iron. No, it's not the same iron as, let's say, the iron in raw meats and stuff. Not raw meats, in red meats. There's two types of iron, non-heme iron and heme iron. Non-heme iron is the one spinach has, and it is very, very hard to digest by the body. This is what I'm trying to say. These nutrients, they go deeper than what you think. Plants are not bioavailable at all. Just because a plant contains a certain nutrient, just it contains a bit of protein, doesn't mean that it's available to be taken in and digested. Plants are organisms too, they don't want to be eaten. Actually, animals don't want to be eaten either. Well, that's a completely different ball game, mate. Plants can't move, so they have to adapt in different ways to stop people from eating them. An animal can move, he has adaptations that are completely different from plants. Don't make that stupid claim. And this is the deeper level that they don't tell you. It's easy to explain, but they don't tell you, and they know it as well. People also need to take into account protein quality as well. Just because it says 50 grams of protein on the label doesn't mean that it's going to be the same amount as, let's say, 50 grams of eggs. It's protein quality as well. You even see myths like vitamin A. Do you know that plants actually do not contain vitamin A? They don't contain vitamin D either. People don't even know how vitamin D is actually made, and they'll say, oh yeah, it contains vitamin D, it contains vitamin A, because they know that you're not going to actually look deep into it. They know that you don't actually understand it at a deeper level. I'm not saying like I'm super smart, I understand everything, but I'm saying when you say to someone, hey, a carrot has vitamin A, I'm not going to look deep into that. They're going to think, oh yeah, that's vitamin A. What in plant foods are called carotenes. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into it because it's quite complex, but plants don't actually contain vitamin A, they contain carotenes. What the body has to do is convert these carotenes into vitamin A, but the problem is 50% of the population do not contain the necessary enzymes to convert that into vitamin A, and the people who do, it's very hard to convert it into vitamin A. Now, plants aren't all bad, but they contain things called anti-nutrients, things that aren't good and are actually toxic to humans. Oxalates, phytates, tannins, all anti-nutrients that actually stop us from digesting nutrients that we need for our body. So yes, a lot of negative things can happen from consuming high amounts of vegetables, especially if they're raw or lightly cooked, if they're not hard cooked, boiled, fried. Cook and prepare them in a way that destroys the anti-nutrients, and some of them you just need to completely avoid in general. The first anti-nutrient, glucosinolates and goitrogens. Now these are anti-nutrients that are in your greens and your salads, and it's what many modern vegetables have been created from through genetic engineering. And you can look up people getting goiter from eating too much kale and these types of vegetables. Alright, so this is post-editing Fritz, and I've seen a lot of studies saying that if you do encounter goiter or problems with your thyroid from kale, what you should do is that you should just increase your iodine uptake. But iodine isn't the only thing that's going to be infected. Isothiocyanates also inhibit thyroid hormone, and that cannot be countered by anything. No matter how much iodine you eat, it will not help you. You need to boil them a lot if you want to actually take these anti-nutrients out, and most of the time people are not taking them out because they're not cooked long enough. Now they also contain isocyanates. They inhibit thyroid hormone, stimulate inflammatory responses in the body, and they increase cell death. Now they also contain a thing called indoles. Now these stop ATP energy reactions, and ATP is just a thing that we need in order to function. It's pretty much energy. More blood clotting, decreased energy production, and reduced appetite and food intake. And these come from cooked Brussels sprouts to most cruciferous vegetables. Now onto the second anti-nutrient, lectins. These are your grains, your legumes, your seeds. Now these cause problems for a lot of people. Lectins, saponins, and gluten are the main anti-nutrients associated with a leaky gut. And I'm not even going to go into how important your gut health is. The main thing I'll leave you with in terms of gut health is the quote, "Every disease starts in the gut." If that doesn't convince you on how the gut is important, 50% of the dopamine is made in the gut, 90 to 95% of the serotonin is also made in the gut, 5 to 10% of the entire world is said to have a healthy gut. 5 to 10%. Anxiety, ADHD, depression, schizophrenia, autism, OCD, bipolar, dementia, Parkinson's side effects have been greatly reduced, sometimes completely taken away by increasing gut health. This is no joke, brother. I'm gonna link all the studies, by the way, as well. Everything I say in this video, I'm gonna link. Gut health is no joke. There's a reason why they don't talk about or address it. You need to realize the health industry is a billions of dollars industry, billions of pounds, billions of money. So they're not just gonna, lectins in particular are contained in vegetable oils as well, in high amounts. They damage the intestines because they're attracted to sugar in the cell. And that causes cell damage, and in a lot of cases, cell death. They commonly cause joint pain as well. Now, some people tolerate lectins better than most, but I wouldn't take the chance. You can reduce the amount of lectins through traditional methods like fermenting and soaking. Now, saponins also damage the intestinal lining, and they also damage red blood cells as well. They damage enzymes, inhibit enzymes, and inhibit thyroid function as well. When saponins enter the body, they foam up, and this is what causes cell damage. They're contained in soy, chickpeas, onions, garlic. Consuming a large amount of these unprepared is what leads to horrible gut problems in most vegans. Now, flavonoids, these are the things most definitely you should always be avoiding, as they contain high amounts of phytoestrogens or isoflavones. These are found in soy, peanuts, chickpeas, pretty much foods that were mainly man-made and wasn't actually available to humans back in the day. They're associated with reduced fertility, cell death in embryos, early puberty in women, and also an irregular cycle. A woman fed a soy formula had menstrual cramps that lasted for longer periods as well. Isoflavones resulted in fatty breast tissue in male rats and altered brain development. It's pretty much a poison that alters our hormone. It's definitely something we need to be avoiding. Gluten. Now this is a big one. Gluten is an enzyme inhibitor in everyone, and anything that inhibits enzymes impairs digestive function. Your body isn't producing enzymes to digest and break down the food just kind of ferments and cysts in the stomach and it causes the damage of cells. It promotes the growth of negative gut bacteria. It's associated with a leaky gut, autoimmune diseases, allergic reactions, cognitive problems, joint pain, headaches, fatigue, and poor memory. Phytic acid and oxalates. It's actually oxalates, but just stay with me, okay? These are two very big things talked about in a negative light on most vegan diets, and these stop and inhibit various minerals that we need. Phytic acid is found in grains and legumes, and oxalates are found in legumes and greens, so cruciferous vegetables. And they're in some nuts as well, like macadamia nuts. Phytic acid primarily inhibits calcium, phosphorus, copper, iron, magnesium, zinc, and manganese. Oh my god, it inhibits zinc. Do you know how zinc is important for testosterone? Magnesium, calcium. They also inhibit digestive enzymes. Plants overall, especially the genetically modified plants that are given in the Western diet, are not as nutritious as people think they are. They're not that nutritious at all, really. Now for plants, it's mainly the dosage makes a poison, and also where you're getting it from as well. You want to absolutely be avoiding isoflavones. Now other anti-nutrients can be reduced by soaking, fermenting, cooking properly, and many other fermentation methods as well. If you ever do want to choose plant food, try buying higher quality indigenous food, a natural version of that food, but they're extremely expensive, even more expensive than animal foods. And most people are just going to stick to that cheap genetically modified vegetable and fruits anyway. So wild plant foods are too difficult and too expensive to obtain. But actually, plants are good. If you look at Japan and centenarians and Okinawa, the diets are mainly plant-based. They're not animal-based. You're wrong. I was waiting for someone to say this. I was just waiting. I know no one said it, was just me, but I'm just trying to handle other objections, because as I was researching this, I tried to look for other research as well that completely combated my research. There was a lot that I did so that I would cover all bases. Well, let me show you a video completely debunking this and actually steel manning my point, making my point stronger.
What is the traditional Okinawan cuisine known for?
According to the official tour guide of the Okinawan Prefecture, their cuisine centers around pork.
Which is obviously a vegetable.
Obviously. On a more serious note, they do indeed eat a lot of vegetables. Shallots, papaya, taro, goya, daikon, chumeso, or the algae called sea grapes are all popular ingredients. But perhaps the most well-known food item is the purple sweet potato. You can read thousands of articles written about the health benefits of this ubiquitous vegetable, as if this was the magic secret behind the longevity phenomenon in Okinawa. But what they don't tell you is that the times when people ate this vegetable on a daily basis ended more than 60 years ago. As you can see, by 1965, sweet potato consumption fell drastically to almost zero.
Oops. Then what's the obsession with sweet potatoes?
Welcome to the world of half-truths, Mandy. There are many more traditional foods that are never mentioned in the Blue Zone's media. For example, if you asked Okinawan children if they preferred McDonald's over their grandmother's rafta, sadly, the majority would choose eating in the American fast food chain. Of course, it's not the Big Mac that is traditional.
What's the food called again?
Rafta, or braised pork belly, which is also known in Hawaii as it was introduced by Okinawan immigrants in the early 1900s, but we have to mention soki soba, tender pork ribs and fish cake on top of noodles in pork broth, and mimigar, shredded pig ears. These are all big favorites among the locals.
Welcome to Okinawa, the island of beaches, sunshine, and good pork. Next up on this Okinawan food tour of Naha, we actually drove a little bit outside of the city. We're north of the city, a place called Uraso. And let me tell you, we could not have an Okinawan food tour without eating this dish. It seems like literally the entire population of Okinawa just at 11 a.m. just drops whatever they're doing and goes to eat this one dish for lunch. It's extremely popular. The menu, as with most good places, is extremely small. They just have a few different things you can order, including the different pork parts and then the yushi tofu soba. So this one is the soki soba, and soki I believe is the ribs. Oh, we have to just taste that broth first. Oh, that's on another level. It's so clean. Porky, but not oily. I'll try that rib real fast before moving on to the next. Oh, wow. That's the most tender rib meat you'll ever have. It just completely falls off the bone. Okinawan food is also known to be extremely nutritious. It's a blue zone of the world, where many people live to be over 100 years old, traditionally. And that has to do especially with the diet and the air and the atmosphere, I think. You notice there's a lot of fermentation, a lot of miso, a lot of vegetables, tofu, yeah. Surprisingly, there's also a lot of pork. So this is another traditional dish. Pig ears, boiled. How are they prepared? And then shredded. It almost looks like lemongrass. Oh, let's try this. Oh, there's cabbage on the bottom too. Oh, that's delicious. That's the most refreshing pig ears I've ever had in my life.
So next one is a very traditional Okinawan dish, lafte. Lafte is a stewed pork belly. It's beautiful. It's simmered with, is it soy sauce? Melting in my mouth. And it has good pork flavor. Look at that. Doesn't that look divine? Oh my god, it smells so good. I don't know why pork tastes so good in Okinawa. It has so much flavor.
If this is what a plant-based paradise looks like, count me in.
Me too. Who needs KFC when you have beautiful, succulent pork with fresh vegetables? Or if you're a little more adventurous, you must try goat soup. Today you will only find it in old-school, traditional restaurants, but before the war, there were more than 100,000 goats in Okinawa. Nearly every family raised pigs and goats.
Goats? Another traditional blue zone vegetable, I suppose?
Well, goats eat plants, so we might as well call them plant-based. Oh, I almost forgot. There was a dietary survey made in 2002 asking different age groups the following question. What do you recall as Okinawan traditional dishes? Guess what was the most frequent answer among elderly people?
Miso soup?
Pig trotters.
Hello! Welcome to Mickey's Kitchen. Today is the 385th day. I'm going to show you how to make tebichi. Tebichi is a popular dish in Okinawa. It simmers potatoes or pig slaughters. Few Japanese people outside Okinawa eat pig's feet. But Okinawans have a peculiar culture of eating every part of the pig thoroughly.
Many also recalled nakami, a soup made from pig guts, as a traditional dish. Goya, a very bitter vegetable, was also on the list. It's usually eaten as a stir-fry with tofu, eggs, and small pieces of meat or fish.
Or in the form of longevity ice cream.
Who doesn't love a bit of bitter ice cream? Anyway, this dish, Goya champuru, can be found in Dan Buettner's Recipes Book 2, The Blue Zone's Kitchen. 100 recipes to live to 100. He claims that he studied the diet of the Blue Zones, but in his version, there is no egg, fish, or pork. Actually, there is no pork in any of his Okinawan recipes, or any meat or fish in any Blue Zone recipe. It's basically a vegan cookbook.
Hi everybody, I want to tell you about a beautiful new book that I just got in the mail. It's by Dan Buettner. So Dan Buettner became very, very famous for his Blue Zones research, but he's now published this beautiful cookbook, which is as solid and engaging as the research itself. It's got zillions of recipes in it. They're all plant-based and beautiful photographs to go along with it. So good on you, Dan. Congratulations. And you're going to love this.
What? Is this a joke? Please tell me, Jake, it's not true.
It is real, Mandy, I'm afraid. The creator of the Blue Zones diet didn't find it important to include pork, the star of the Okinawan cuisine, in a book about Okinawan food, because that would have ruined his whole concept of centenarians eating nothing but tofu, sweet potatoes, and colorful vegetables. Luckily, we can easily debunk that what he says is not true.
So lunch, in case you hadn't realised yet, is more vegetables, seafood, a little rice, and maybe even a little land meat like pork. One of the 100-year-olds that I met and spoke with said that she actually had a small amount of pork every day to keep healthy. So it's not just vegetables that the Okinawans eat by any means.
You know what I find the most infuriating in this? There's this white guy, Dan Buettner, who goes to an exotic country pretending to be a researcher and spins a fairy tale that fits his plant-based agenda and his thirst for money, and the whole world believes this fake version is how Okinawans traditionally ate. It's a serious cultural crime, and nobody's held him accountable so far.
Yeah, he did the same cherry picking with other Blue Zones, which have even more meat and dairy in their diet than Okinawans. We're talking about goat herders and shepherds who would roll on the floor laughing if they saw what Buettner put in his beautiful book. And yet, you will find 0 meat in the recipes on the official website. 0, zilch, nothing. Imagine that. Instead, they give you a bunch of recipes from vegan cookbooks. Basically, it's just advertisement for Buettner's business associates. More than 24 vegan recipe books are waiting the unsuspecting visitors to tell them the false tales of plant-based centenarians. And when the recipe calls for feta cheese, no problem. Here comes the fake tofu feta to the rescue, sponsored by the plant-based dairy maker, Violife. There's one recipe from Dr. McDougall, a veteran plant-based guru, the author of The Healthiest Diet on the Planet.
Pizza, pancakes, potatoes, pasta. Seriously? The healthiest.
He's also a firm believer of the nonsense that humans have no taste buds for protein and fat. Apparently, he hasn't seen our video yet where we destroyed this stupid myth. But it's never too late, Doctor, to learn at least the basics of human physiology. Another recipe is from the makers of the shameless vegan fake documentary, What the Health? And my personal favorite is from the one and only Dr. Greger, the go-to guy of basically every plant-based propaganda film.
The saturated fat tripled.
This is hilarious. The whole congregation is here. They really faked everything. People buy the books or go to that website looking for authentic recipes that fairly represent the blue zones, and they're scammed into following a 100% plant-based diet.
Just become a vegan, man. No, eating meats, that's bad. It's bad for the environment, it's bad for everyone. It's a psyop. It makes the populace easier to control. Men become more submissive. They won't fight back as much. They won't object as much. But that's a whole video for another day. Oh, I can't wait, man. Now, what should your diet be? I'm not going to say it's going to be full raw carnivore. You need to go raw carnivore, no fats, no vegetables. No. I feel like that's almost a response to veganism and realizing the modern diet is just false, and so they feel like it's just all meats. Meats are amazing, and this diet is amazing, it's good, but it's not the full picture. You need your saturated fats, your dairy, your milk. Now I'm going to also tell you the best diet and why. Milk. Raw milk if possible, but definitely whole fat milk. These are one of the foods that's going to make you grow taller. It's going to help with your facial and your bone development in general during puberty and during your adolescence. It contains several essential nutrients, especially protein and calcium. Just look at the top milk consuming countries in the world relative to population size and you'll see what I mean. The Finns, the Swedes, the Dutch, they are some of the tallest populations in the world. Even the tallest population in Africa, pretty sure it's the Dinka tribe, they are mostly on this raw milk diet. Amino acids are one of the most important features when it comes to protein and nutrition. Out of the 20 amino acids required for good growth and normal growth development, 12 can be manufactured normally by the human body. However, 8 of them we need to get from our diet, and without them, tissue growth and repair is impaired. You can find all of them, they're bioavailable, easily digestible. You can find all of them in the meats, the animal meats, the saturated fats, beef, fish, pork, poultry, all of them. Eggs especially, this will increase your IGF-1 in your bloodstream and is pretty much the #1 factor for bone growth and bone lengthening. People talk about, growth hormone, IGF-1. Insulin growth factor 1. It's responsible for triggering the rapid reproduction of cells across the growth plate cartilage. Or you can just get your proteins from plants, yeah, but we're talking about protein quality, and plus they don't contain the essential amino acids, and again, as I said, they contain anti-nutrients. The literal protein in question that they're talking about comes from the lectins, from the soy, from the isoflavones that increase estrogen. Now if you're on a budget, liver, mincemeat, and eggs, boom, that's all you need. And obviously raw milk and milk in general, whole milk. Make sure the milk is grass-fed as well. You don't want milk from no cow pumped up with estrogens, put in some metal chamber, like under high stress, okay? Now, vitamin D. Again, vitamin D myth in plants. Oh, you can get your vitamin D in plants or whatever. No, you can't. No, you cannot. Vitamin D is actually absorbed by the cholesterol in the body. When it interacts with the skin, UVB light interacts with the skin, is stored in the cholesterol. And you get that cholesterol from your saturated fats. High amounts of vitamin D in the blood stimulate calcium and phosphorus absorption in the small intestines. Without vitamin D, only 10 to 15% of calcium and only 60% of phosphorus is actually absorbed. Vitamin D also makes growth plates more sensitive to IGF-1 and growth hormone. That's why when guys are, playing on the hard tops on basketball or playing football outside in the summer, they come back next year, they're a little bit taller, you know what I mean? I'm gonna get to lifestyle in a sec, don't worry. Make sure you're cooking, when you're cooking as well, make sure you're cooking in lard. Yes, lard is good for you. There's nothing bad with lard. They've demonized lard. It's not bad for you at all. It's very good for you and actually helps and pretty much completely cures depression. Cook with butter as well. However, I will say the butter that you're probably using now is not the actual butter that you should be eating. Now, what you should avoid: industrial fats and oils, pretty much all seed oils. You should be avoiding high fructose corn syrup. You should be avoiding just high sugar in general. Anything that's high sugar. If you're having if you're having toast, put butter on it. Organic butter. Don't put jam. Don't put that high fructose, high sugar jam. You piece of bacon. Pasteurized milk. Don't be having none of that. Don't be having no green milk. Don't be having no red milk. People actually use red milk. I can't believe it. Get that full fat milk. No artificial sweeteners. I shouldn't have to tell you not to eat soy. I hope people who don't watch my channel eat soy. I really hope. And breakfast cereals. Do you know how the psyop that they've managed to pull on the entire world that breakfast cereals are good for you? Oh my days. Grown ass man eating cereal. You little kid, you're not 5 years old, you're not 8 years old. What are you eating cereal for? You go ahead and get your shreddies, yeah? You go get your flipping Cocoa Pops. Flipping child, man. Come on. I'm not trying to be rude or anything. I used to literally eat cereal as well. But I'm telling you, cereal is not the one. Ditch cereal. Completely ditch cereal. You know what you need for breakfast in the morning? Egg, mincemeat, liver, milk. People are going to think that it's over for them since they're whatever age. Let me tell you it like this. If you're 10, if you're 11, if you're 12, if you're 13, 14, 15, 16, if you're 17, if you're 18, if you're 19, if you're 20, if you're 21, if you're 22, if you're 23, if you're 24, if you're 25, it's not over. It's not over, okay? You can do this. There's a very high chance you're still in puberty, and even if you're not, this is going to help you anyways. Oh, it's over for me. It's over. Stop all that crying. What's wrong with you, little baby? Oh, it's over for me. Bro, stop all that crying. It's never over. You can do anything. With my little self-experiment as well, I'm gonna see if it even matters the age of where you are, if that makes sense. But there's a little experiment I'm gonna be doing. I'll reveal it in a year. You remember from now, and I'll make a video on it. When you're eating, chew properly. Make sure you're chewing all of it. Digestion starts in the mouth, doesn't start in the gut. Don't just be swallowing the food. Make sure you're chewing a lot. You make sure you're chewing well. When you're sleeping, tape your mouth so you're breathing through your nose only. Mouth breathing gets less oxygen to you. Your hormones are going to be less because you're getting less breath in the air. Trust me, just tape your mouth. Get antimicrobial doctor tape. I'll link it on the screen. And yeah, just one thin strip. Like that. That's all you need. Make sure the toothpaste that you're using doesn't have any fluoride in it. Get non-fluoride toothpaste. It's easy. Don't get charcoal toothpaste. It's a scam. It's a psyop. Make sure your tongue posture is correct. Make sure you're mewing properly. Mewing is not cope. No, it isn't. It keeps your palate wide, and it's actually the correct way that your tongue is literally meant to be. It's not some trend, looks maxing trend. It's literally just health. That's how your tongue is meant to be, so you develop a wide palate, so your nose breathing. Now, how you're sleeping matters a lot as well. Do not sleep in contact with your mouth and on the bone like this. If you sleep like this, I'm not gonna say so I was gonna say as a joke, but just know that you're really messing your face up. Also, chewing is going to help increase IGF-1 in your face, and it's gonna help promote growth in your jawline. When you're resting your teeth, make sure it's your premolars that are in contact and not your full molars in your whole teeth and your whole row and set of teeth. I shouldn't really have to talk about nose breathing, so I'm not even gonna talk about it. Just breathe through your nose, mate. Get into basketball. Get into basketball. Get into swimming. Get into basketball. Get into sprinting. Be playing that every day. It's a fun sport. Doing that every day. Yeah. When you're playing basketball as well, be jumping a lot, creating that microfractures. Just trust me. You should be exercising every single day. Now, when I say that, I don't mean you should be going gym every single day, but I mean you should be doing some form of exercise, whether that be walking for an hour, sprints, running around, playing tag, being outside. We are not built for this sedentary lifestyle. We're not built to sit at desks. We weren't built to be in a house the whole day. Get outside, get some vitamin D, get some sunlight, go to the gym. What are you doing? Be consistent in the gym. Go to the gym. You should be hormone maxing at all times. Make sure your testosterone is at an all-time high. Make sure your DHT is at an all-time high. Make sure that your growth hormone, your IGF-1 is at an all-time high. Keep them high, and you can do that through doing the things that I just said and eating loads of nutritious food. Now, the reason why oral hygiene is so important is that it promotes facial harmony. People who have a good, healthy looking face have good amounts of facial harmony, and they have that through a wide palate, a very wide palate, and great oral hygiene. You should be also doing sprints at least 2 times a week. Also, limiting the amount of pollutants is so necessary. If your estrogen is too high, your growth plates are just going to fuse. If you are underestimating the effects of removing pollutants from your entire lifestyle, I'm going to show you. Alright, now the final thing that contributes to your lifestyle, out of everything that I've just said in this video, that would be S tier, and if I could put what I'm about to say here, it'd be Z tier, it'd be flipping heavens, okay? Sleep. Get your sleep, okay? Out of all the most common denominator that I see on self-improvement, and just in general for health, is people just aren't getting sleep. Not even how long is sleep, but sleep quality. They're waking up in the middle of the night, they have sleep apnea, they're mouth breathing. Bro, get your sleep. That's the thing that's gonna actually put you ahead. If you actually want to be ahead, get some flipping sleep, man. 8 to 9 hours minimum of quality sleep. All of the things I just said, they're not going to mean nothing. You're not going to be able to increase your DHT, your testosterone, none of that. I can't even. Keep sleeping at 2 a.m, keep sleeping at 1 a.m, keep sleeping at 12 a.m, keep sleeping at 11, bro. Do if that's what you really want to do, you're a grown ass man, do what you want in it. When I wake up, I just feel tired. I have no motivation. It's hard for me to get my goals done. I don't have enough willpower. I don't have enough discipline. You know what's gonna help with that? Sleep. If there was literally a drug that done the effects that sleep gave you, it'd be banned. They wouldn't allow. It's that overpowered. If you actually want to get ahead of people, if you actually want to, I want to get ahead, people want to do this, do that. People with these flipping stupid Sigma edits and stuff. If you actually want to get ahead, get some sleep, bruv. That's what the real 1% do. They get their flipping sleep. I can't take you seriously if you're not actually getting good quality sleep. I can't take you seriously. You want to be successful, but you're actively impeding on your health. You're operating at 40-30% of what you could be operating at. It's ridiculous. Get real. See, sleep quality is more important than how long you're sleeping as well. You can be sleeping 8 hours and get horrible quality sleep. Sleep hard. It's the same thing of someone studying for like 3 hours, but in those 3 hours they're not actually studying well. If you're going to sleep well, have good sleep quality. And this is what I mean. Make sure your room is dark, make sure it's cold, make sure that you're breathing through your nostrils, make sure that you're not getting up, make sure you don't have high anxiety before going to sleep, make sure your cortisol levels are low. Now, I made a sleep guide and it was very good, but I've learned even more stuff about sleep that I can implement into a more robust guide that's actually going to help people more. So I'm definitely going to be making another video on that. But if you need help on your sleep for now, I definitely say watching that video is good. The main thing with people who want to get some sleep is they think that some stupid military method on YouTube is going to flipping help their insomnia. It's not going to help you with nothing. Preparation of sleep starts from the moment you wake up and happens throughout the day. Since you're here in the video, I'd recommend a few things. Some of the stuff that I said before applies, but if you're really struggling, like for example, if your circadian rhythm is messed up, which it is if you've been sleeping at irregular times like 2 a.m, 1 a.m, 10 p.m, and it's just not consistent, well, then this is going to be a little bit harder. What you need to do is you're going to need to take a nice hot shower before bed. When you wake up in the morning, I want you to look at the sun, look outside, and actually reset your circadian rhythm. Before bed, let's say you're walking home from school, I want you to view some evening sunlight. And you know not to view, like if you actually want to take this serious, you're not going to view technology before you go into bed. But if you're still addicted, and if you still, because when I say addiction, I don't mean like, oh, the phone's just making me addicted. I mean you are literally like going on your phone, because it is free will. You're not being controlled. Take responsibility for your addiction and say that it is me doing it, because it is you. Again, bro, I stress this again. If you're taking creatine, you're going to the gym religiously, but you're getting 5 hours sleep, you're a dummy. And I don't mean that to be rude. I'm doing that to say that you could be doing so much more that's going to be helping you, and it's so simple, but you're just simply not doing it. You're taking it for granted. Yeah, when you get in bed, do not move. Your body actually tries to make you think that you're uncomfortable. You're not actually that uncomfortable. Stay still for a few minutes. Literally imagine you're paralyzed from the neck down as soon as you get into sleep. As soon as you get into bed, get into your winning position, wherever it is, sleeping on your side, sleeping on your back. Do not sleep on your stomach. Make sure your room is cold, put a fan on, but before you even go and take your hot shower or whatever, make sure your windows are fully open and make sure your fan is on. And yes, bro, literally stay still, breathe deeply. Breathing deeply does work, but this flipping stupid military method not going to fix nothing if you haven't done the steps beforehand. They can help, but if you actually you have actually bad insomnia and stuff like that, it's not going to actually work. So yeah, paralysis method, deep breathing so that you're very relaxed. Yeah, that should get you going, but I'm going to make a more robust guide that's actually going to fully help and cover all bases. So overall, what overall knowledge of epigenetics should bring is that it's never over. Your genetic expression will change throughout your life based on how you live your life and your environmental changes and your diet and all your lifestyle and stuff that you're going to do throughout your life. You need to realize that's also going to carry on to your children. So if you're just a flipping lard ass, you're just sitting on your ass, you're not doing nothing with your life, you're not athletic, you're not actually contributing nothing, your children will have that trait as well. If you're athletic, if you're challenging your brain, if you're trying to be as smart as possible, if you're actually trying to improve as much as possible, these traits are going to pass on as well. And you also need to find a woman who's also into these sorts of stuff. I don't mean like flipping self-improvement stuff, but you know what I mean, who's healthy, fitness, that sort of stuff as well. Now again, I can't stress how, if you think I was talking about pollutants earlier. If you think that, oh, okay, pollutants is fine. No, it's not fine at all. Still try to reduce them as much as possible. As I said, like if you're not financially free, you can't afford to do a lot of this stuff. So definitely I'd say reduce your plastic. If you're still down it, I have an interesting thing to say to you and an interesting little case study. So in the African tribes, in the Dinka tribes, their 5-alpha reductase mRNA expression in their wee tissue was unaffected, as they hadn't come into any contact with degenerative BPAs and plastics and all of that stuff. They hadn't come into contact with any phytoestrogens and any the high GMO foods and all that stuff like that. They hadn't come into contact with any of that, and the things were massive, like absolutely huge. I wasn't there flipping analyzing, okay, it was flipping the size stuff, but you can obviously see that's huge. I'm not gonna flipping actually unblur or whatever. You can literally just judge from the size of how much I had to block. It's insane. Now their frames are actually weak, at least the African tribes that didn't actually eat high animal meats. Their frames are actually quite tiny, and their overall dimorphism is weak, and they actually had low testosterone and prenatal testosterone, but their primary dimorphism is high because of the lack of estrogen receptors due to not being exposed to any phytoestrogens, very aggressive phytoestrogens in the genetically modified plants, and no plastics. It also shows that genitals are meant to be way bigger than we actually think. And also I forgot this for sleep, eating earlier. Eat at 4, 5, 6, and that is when it starts to get techie, especially when you're not even meant to be digesting foods 3 hours before bed. Most people have horrible sleep schedules, they're literally eating at like 8, 7, absolutely ridiculous times. And yeah, but I said in the vid, long ass vid, I will say though, 100% if you implement this stuff, you're going to see radical great changes throughout your life. You're going to be happy that you had this information, bro. If you think like the information in this video was good and you think that I could bring more good information for you, I recommend subscribing. If you don't, if you think this is one and done vid, that's fine, you don't have to subscribe. I'm not flipping forcing you. I don't want to be in your feed just clogging up your feed. It's alright, bro. However, if you think that you want this information to be reached to more people, you want to push it more, then liking actually helps to push the video out more, so I'd appreciate that. Even though if you watched to the end, it's 1 hour vid, I really commend you, because I can understand not wanting to watch a long ass vid. If you want to join a community that isn't £500 a month, then I definitely recommend joining my community. We actually help, and it's good vibes and fun. Obviously I can't be asked to do the whole flipping promo thing. It's good, trust me. Just trust me, bro. But no, for real, you can do anything, achieve your dreams, succeed. The world is yours. Yeah, peace.